Okay, I'm going to make this video. This is the 10 greatest Indy car races I've ever seen. And I thought, there's a lot of interest in this area of the United States, central Indiana, about open wheel racing. Um, Personally, I've been going, my first Indy car race was on July 16, 1978 at Johnny Rutherford won it in a McLaren at Michigan International Speedway. I was just getting ready, I was 6 years old. I'm going to list the top 10, and I was at all these races. That's one of the criteria I had. I wanted to make sure that I'd been at these races, and I'll explain exactly why I chose the races in the order they're in. When I'm looking, all of them are 500-mile races, and all 10 of them are either in Indianapolis or in Michigan. And racing from the start to finish, and also looking in if it was a spectacular finish and how many cars were fighting for the lead at the finish. 10th on my list is the 1992 Indianapolis 500. It wasn't the most competitive race I've ever seen. Michael Andretti pretty much dominated it all the way through. However, there was a preponderance of yellows because of a bunch of accidents and the cold weather, and it kept the race close. He had his hands full. It was entertaining through most of it. And at the end, of course, he broke 11 laps in the finish, and we had a spectacular duel between Al Unser Jr. and Scott Goodyear. It's still the closest finish in the history of the 500, 0.043 seconds. And it was just, this is a tough 10 races I've got here. This was a very exciting race. However, Michael had him covered most of the day, so I have to say it's 10th, and there's been some other ones that were better. 9th on my list is the 1986 Indianapolis 500, the three-car duel between Kevin Kogan, Bobby Rahal, and Rick Mears. It was delayed a week. It was worth the wait. It's the fastest 500 at the time, and it was also one of the safest. By standards of some of the later races, though, that I saw at Michigan and even a couple at Indianapolis, it was very competitive, but they didn't really pass each other back and forth a lot. I mean, they kind of kept each other in view, and then right at the end, they jumped all over each other, and it was a tremendous race. And it was a restart. Bobby Rahal passed Rick Mears or Kevin Kogan on a restart with 2 laps left, and still one of the great 500s, no doubt. 8th on my list is the 1982 Indianapolis 500, the famous duel between Gordon Johncock and Rick Mears. I was 10 years old at that race. It was a very good race all the way through. If you watch it on YouTube to this day, it was very competitive, not only between Johncock and Mears, between Pancho Carter and Tom Snever were in there as well. It's hard to emphasize how big of an impact that race had at the time. It had never happened before. It should have happened a couple times in the 60s, but it didn't. And just an incredibly exciting race. And for Gordon Johncock, it was a hard luck driver to win it. It still stands as just an incredible race. 7th on my list is the 1989 Indianapolis 500. Now, of all the races that I've listed in this top 10, this is probably the least competitive throughout most of it. It was a pretty tight race between Emerson Fittipaldi and Michael Andretti, but not overly so. And they put a lot of distance between themselves and most of the rest of the people in the field. When Michael blew it, looked like Emerson was going to walk away with it. And then Al Unser Jr. began to stalk him in heavy traffic over the last 15, 20 laps or so. Totally shocking at the time it happened. And the reason I got this ranked above a couple of the other ones was because they went wheel to wheel abreast of each other in traffic. And to this day, I think it was the most exciting closing laps I ever saw at Indianapolis. And then, of course, the situation where they touched wheels on the next to last lap, and Al crashed and Emerson won the race. It was just an astounding race. And ABC won an Emmy for their coverage too. And Paul Page and his crew did a really neat deal where they didn't even talk for about 2-3 minutes straight of the telecast. And just you could hear the crowd in the background. It was really, really neat. 6th on my list is the 1983 Michigan 500. It was a race won by an unknown at the time, a guy named John Paul Jr. He was driving a PC-10 that Jeff Brabham had taken to 4th in Indianapolis in May. Absolutely tremendous race. It was delayed by rain. There was 25 lead changes among 11 drivers. Paul basically ran. He was fifth, I think, on the final restart and just passed everybody. He passed Mario. He passed Pancho Carter, Ray Hall. He caught Allenzer Sr. in the tri-oval with 3 laps left. And he ran and passed Mears on the final turn. Kind of flew up on him in traffic, got underneath Rick Mears. And then on top of that, he made the pass, and then Mears lost control in the turbulence and was hit by Chris Neifel at the same time that Paul was taking the checkered flag. To this day, it was just certainly one of the greatest races of the 1980s, and a lot of huge names up there too. Although only half of the race is available to watch on YouTube because it was delayed by rain. Fifth on my list is the 1984 Michigan 500. That year the weather was perfect. To me, the definitive race almost of the 1980s, held 6 days before the Olympics opened in Los Angeles. Just an incredible summer for me. Absolutely unbelievable race. Mario Andretti defeated Tom Sneva by 0.11 seconds. There was a lot of hair-raising accidents. I commented on somewhere else on YouTube. Mario's blocking maneuvers that he put on Sneva were a lot more drastic than they come across on television. We were basically looking right up at the tailpipe of him, and there was a big, woo that came from the crowd every time Mario kind of almost jerked down into Sneva in the corner. It was really, I like both drivers, and it was a tremendous race. But, I have to agree with Sneva. He said that Mario made some pretty dangerous moves there, but it may be Andretti's greatest job ever of driving to keep somebody behind him. Fourth on my list is the 2013 Indianapolis 500, a race that just happened a couple months ago. I credit a lot of that to the huge body work that was designed this year that allowed basically cars, you just punching a hole in the air and the guys are being sucked up right behind them, which is kind of what happened with the Hanford device up in Michigan, and more of those races in a second. But, they went 133 laps at one point with no yellows and green, and they were still right together. And to me, it's the best, really the best full race I ever saw at Indianapolis. Kind of robbed at the finish with the wreck. Kanan winning it because there was too many. There was yellows. People were trying to make stuff happen. But it was 65 lead changes or something like that, and just absolutely astounding. We can just hope for more in the future. I hope they don't change the configuration of the car at all. Third on my list is the 2001 Michigan 500. It would be right up there in the top 1 or 2, but there was a long stretch of just green at the start. Kenny Brack kind of got out front and led for a while. Once the first yellow was thrown, it was absolutely unbelievable. It's probably the greatest final lap I've ever seen. Patrick Carpentier, Michel Jourdain Jr., and Dario Franchitti went 3 abreast in traffic going into the final turn. And then Alex Tagliani was in the middle of it and kind of blocked everyone else and let Carpentier win his first race. It was also the last race that CART ever ran up there. Outstanding race, and one of the 4 Hanford device races at Michigan. Second was the 2000 Michigan 500. The year before that, I don't ever remember Indy cars in such fearsome looking clusters as I saw that day. Literally 14, 15 cars in a pack. At one point, Alex Tagliani was leading the race, and he lost control and hit the wall, and there was just cars just darting like bees around him. There was a stretch where Penske, of course, tried to do the deal with the fuel trick, and Helio Castroneves got out front, led quite a bit of the race in the last 30 or 40 laps. I won't give it the greatest race of all time because there were just 2 of them. Juan Montoya and Michael Andretti ended up going side by side for the last 15, 20 laps, but they kind of broke the draft from the rest of the guys, and Montoya won it, side by side at the finish. And the best race I've ever seen, and you probably suspect it by now, was the 1998 US 500 at Michigan, the first year of the Hanford device. I think Robin Miller called it the most incredible version of high-speed rollerball he's ever seen. There was 165 lead changes around the track, 63 at the line. It was just unbelievable. And Greg Moore won it. They basically fanned out when went more or less 4 abreast in the first turn on the last lap. And of course, unfortunately, Moore was killed a little bit over a year after that at Fontana. And that was the best weekend of racing I have ever seen, because on top of that, the Indy Lights race on Saturday, which was won by Cristiano D'Amata, they ran under a blanket the whole way. And I remember thinking, this is just the weather was perfect. It was about 81 degrees on Sunday, and I remember thinking, wouldn't it be something if the Indy cars could run this close, like the next day, and they did. And so that's it. Again, I'm really interested in people's comments on what they think maybe the best races they've ever seen are. Now, I understand. I went with during the split. I went with kart, and so I missed a lot of the IRL races. I didn't go to the Speedway for several years. I understand that there was some tremendous racing at Texas with the IRL, and I'm going to watch them on YouTube eventually one day, and maybe they would be in there. But so I hope you enjoyed this. If you're an open wheel IndyCar fan, and please comment down below, and I'll get back at you. And thanks for watching.